Good evening. So we started talking last night about Elul, about Tkiyat Shofar in Chodesh Elul. So we mentioned the distinction between the Tkiyot Dirashut and the Tkiyot Echovah. Tkiyot Dirashut, the Minhag, we have of blowing the Shofar in Elul, which is a Minhag, a long-standing Minhag, but it's not a fulfillment of a mitzvah, it's not obligatory, versus the mitzvah taseh of blowing the Shofar on Rosh Hashana. Mentioned the fact in order to make that distinction, note that distinction, so we don't blow the shofar on Erev Rosh Hashanah, the last day of Elul. Even in a year like this, when the first day of Rosh Hashanah falls out on Shabbat, and therefore we don't blow the shofar unusually, nonetheless, we still have that day, we still have that break. That's one reason it's brought in Halakha. The other reason it's brought, mentioned last night as well, why we don't blow the shofar on the last day of Elul, is Kadei La'arbev HaSatan. Talk a little bit more about who the Satan is and what he is and why he gets confused so easily. So there are a lot more questions than answers when it comes to this subject. We'll talk about some of them. But in any event, we mentioned as well yesterday, all of this was leading up to a question which the Tzitz Eliezer was asked, which is, if somebody misses the shofar of Elul one of the days, do they have to go back? Do they have to try and hear it? Is there an obligation to hear it? Is there something good about endeavoring to go and hear that shofar that day that you missed out? A person misses... you miss davening, so you have tashlumin the next time that you can daven. Person misses what Tzibur misses Kriyat Torah 1 week. We saw this during Corona when schools were closed, and all of a sudden these halachot became practical and relevant. But you missed the Kriyat Torah 1 week, so there's a din of tashlumin of reading it the next week, etc. Person misses the Tkiyat Shofar one of the days. Okay, it's only a minhag. Is a person required to go back and hear it or to try and hear it? Is there a good thing in it? And the Tzitz Eliezer has asked this question, and a certain Rav who asked the question said he thought that there was a reason, he thought there was a chovah to go and hear. If you missed the shofar one of the days in Elul, you have to go and hear it. And what was his proof? We'll get to his proof. So again, the three reasons why, in the first place, why do we blow the shofar in Chodesh Elul? He said, number one, Rosh Chodesh Elul, the day that Moshe Rabbeinu went back up to Har Sinai, the shofar was blown to warn the nation not to transgress again, not to go follow after Avodah Zarah, as they did the first time, the first 40 days. And that was a commemoration of that event. Moshe Rabbeinu going up to the mountain, shofar was blown there, we blow the shofar. Number two, in order to awaken us and encourage us to do tshuva during this month. And that was the second reason that was brought. And reason number three, again, I told you, more questions than answers. In order to confuse this Satan. So the Bach actually writes, what does it mean, La'arbev Satan? He says, we blow the shofar every day. Satan won't know when Rosh Hashanah is. Yeah. Again, what does this mean? There's obviously something deeper that's hidden in all of this. Take it on a simple, simplistic level. So everybody now is imagining, little red man with a pitchfork is sitting on your shoulder. He doesn't know what day of the week it is. It's obviously there's a deeper idea than that. But what does this mean? We blow the shofar every day. So he thinks, the shofar has been blown, so maybe it's Rosh Hashanah today, maybe not tomorrow. Why doesn't he just check the luach? I mean, what's behind it? So anyway, the Bach uses that to explain. He says this is why the Torah brings different reasons. The only reason was La'arbev Satan, so you could start blowing the shofar a few days before Rosh Hashanah. If the reason was only because commemoration of what happened on Rosh Chodesh, you'd only blow the shofar on Rosh Chodesh. Why all 29 days? Because of all these reasons. All these reasons together. Okay. So the Tzitz Eliezer says like this. So he's asked the question. He says, according to the one who said that it's so important, you should go back and you should hear the shofar, even somewhere if you missed it. What's his proof? His proof was as follows. I mentioned it briefly yesterday. I'll just elaborate slightly. So the Ramah told us, Ein Tokin Erev Rosh Hashanah. Erev Rosh Hashanah, we don't blow the shofar. So says the Mishnah Berurah here. He quotes the Magen Avraham. And listen to his language. He says like this. Nonetheless, somebody who needs to blow the shofar in order to learn, in order to practice, right, how to get the tkiyot right on Rosh Hashanah, he's allowed to. And these are the words he uses. He says, the daik shemafsik b'veit hakneset, meaning it's enough that you stopped in Beit HaKnesset, i.e., the fact that we have to create a distinction between the Tkiyot Chovah and Tkiyot Rashut, so therefore we have a day where we don't blow the shofar. It's enough from the fact that we stopped the usual practice of blowing the shofar in Beit Knesset, that we don't have to stop the usual, this is the deal he makes, that we don't have to stop the usual practice that one might have of blowing the shofar individually throughout these days. It's enough, the fact you didn't blow the shofar that day in shul, therefore you can carry on blowing the shofar at home, to learn, to whatever it is. This is the deal which somebody made in the Magen Avraham. This is the way it was put to Rav Tzvi Pesach, was put to the Tzitz Eliezer. Therefore, we see from here, it's not just the practice is, not just that this is not a mitzvah which is only, not a minhag, which is only fulfilled in the tzibur, but it's a minhag which needs to be fulfilled by every individual. Every individual throughout the days of Elul, you didn't get to shul, you didn't daven at the tzibur, you should go and you should hear the shofar. So it was suggested. Tzitz Eliezer rejects this out of hand. He rejects it out of hand. He says no. He says the diuk is wrong, the understanding is wrong, and he explains as follows. He says, number one, he says, we've never heard of this. We've never heard of, we know that every month of Elul, you come to shul, you blow the shofar. That's the minhag, that's the universal custom that's done in the community. Where have we heard that, you go around, before Rosh Hashana, so you put out announcements. Anybody who's unable to come to shul, anybody who's unable to be here for shofar blowing, we'll arrange shofar blowing, come to your house, do whatever. Have you ever heard of anybody saying, we'll arrange shofar blowing throughout the month of Elul, we'll come to your house so you can. This is not something people do. It's not the custom. It says, Puk chazi mayam adaba. We have a principle in halakha. Obviously, you have to know when to use it and how to apply it. But in a case like this, where there is no explicit mention of this halakha, we follow the universal practice, which is that people hear the shofar if they're with the tzibur. They don't hear it if they're by themselves. And therefore, he says it seems to be that this is not the practice. Number one. Number two, he says the diuk is not so watertight, right? You want to say from the fact that the Magen Avraham taught us that it's enough not to blow the shofar in Beit Knesset. That's the change you've already made. That's the distinction. It says if he was trying to infer the fact that every individual should be hearing the shofar every day, wherever they are, so he should have said that explicitly. It's a much greater chiddush to make. Again, it's something that we've never heard of. It's something that should be stated in that way. And number three, he says, what's behind it conceptually? Go back to the reasons why we are blowing the shofar in Elul. And he says, it's your point that you raised yesterday, but he says that really these reasons apply to the tzibur and they don't apply to the individual. Right? If we go back and look at the three reasons. Number one, in terms of the fact that shofar was blown on Rosh Chodesh when Moshe Rabbeinu went up to the mountain. Okay, so this was done in the tzibur. This was done in front of everybody. This was a communal occurrence. Okay, now the second one you could say, somebody mentioned to me last night after the shiur, said, but if it's lo reb tshuva, it's to awaken you to do tshuva, that applies individually, that applies to each and every one of us. That's not necessarily something you have to do in a communal setting. So says the Tzitz Eliezer, how do we know? Where do we learn from that the shofar is something which awakens you to do tshuva? So we learn it from the pasuk in Amos, and the pasuk says, if you'll blow the shofar in the city, not in a private house, but in the city, in a communal setting, there it's talking about maybe a shofar of milchama. That's the allusion. But nonetheless, the point is that when there is something about the sort of, again, the communal, the way that it's done, the ma'amad, it's not just one person who hears it, but the entire community hears it. It's blown in such a way that is something which has a greater effect. It's a more transformative effect, a public shofar blowing, and therefore says that Tzitz Eliezer, it seems to be that this whole practice, the way it was instituted, something public, and therefore it's required publicly, and therefore an individual missed one of the days. You don't need to go. You don't need to find a tashlumin for your shofar blowing in the month of Elul. Again, we're talking now about the Tkiyot Rashut. We're not talking about Tkiyot Chovah. Somebody on Rosh Hashana itself, Rosh Hashana, there is a mitzvah to hear the shofar. You weren't able to come to shul for whatever reason, so you should still hear the shofar on Rosh Hashana. During the month of Elul, a person missed a day. That's not something we have to make up for. What about if the community missed it? As I mentioned yesterday, you're in a community somewhere, they don't have a shofar one day, or they don't have anybody in Shachrit who can blow the shofar. So there, Rav Moshe Feinstein writes that if it's possible, we saw that there was a minhag Someone mentioned the Rama mentioned that some places had the minhag to blow shacharit ve'arvit. One of those confusing places where arvit doesn't actually mean arvit. Arvit means in the afternoon, during the day. But he says, therefore, the minhag was to hear the shofar every day. So if a community, for whatever reason, didn't hear it in the morning, they had no one to blow the shofar, then they can do it. They can do it tashlumin at mincha time. Then they should still blow the shofar that day, and that is still the fulfillment of that minhag. But nonetheless, again, this is not, as we said, this is not a chovah. This is not like Kriyat Torah. It's not like the next day, the next day after Shachrit. It's blow the shofar twice, go to 100 plus. No, that is not required. But I think what comes out of all of this, and the message to take out of it, is each day there's a function. Each day serves its own function in Elul. Each morning, this idea of blowing the shofar serves that function, awakening to tshuva. It's another day, it's another step. So whether a person hears the shofar or doesn't hear the shofar, nonetheless, each day should be used, and it should be taken to heart, and it should be internalized, the message in terms of that, in terms of that preparation. There's something else. The brothers friends discuss, are the days of Elul intrinsically, is there an intrinsic value to these days themselves, days of Elul before Rosh Hashana, or is it only due to the fact that it's a means to an end? Is there something, would we define Elul, the days of Elul, as Yemei Ratzon, or would we say, no, Elul is just an ordinary month, there's nothing special about it, but it's the fact that it's preparation, it's the fact that it's the Hashana for Rosh Hashanah and for Yom Kippur, and by virtue of that, there is a significance to it. So now those who say like this, when we get to what is the pasuk, what is the characterization of the days of, when we get to Tishrei, when we get to Rosh Hashanah, leading towards Yom Kippur, so the Rambam writes in Hilchot Shuvah, the pasuk which defines these days is Dirshu Hashem b'matzor, karu b'yato karu. Right? Seek out Hashem where he is to be found, call out him where he is close. Hashem makes himself close to us, as it were. He is to be found in the days. It says Elu Asara Yamim ben Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur. The 10 days from Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur, Aseret Yemei Tshuva, those are the days that are Yemei Ratzon. Those are the days where Hashem comes to us, so to speak. What happens in Elul? So Elul is the opposite. Elul is Rosh Tevot. Anila Dodi V'Dodili. Every Torah you hear about Elul, right? Elul stands for, of course, the name of the month comes later. The name Elul is not mentioned in the Torah. I'll talk about it in a moment. But Elul, the Rosh Tevot, there are many different acronyms and abbreviations that it stands for. The most famous one, Anila Dodi, right? Anila Dodi V'Dodili. So that is phrased on the pasuk in Shir Hashirim. So that is Elul. In other words, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur is Dirshu Hashem b'matzor. Hashem comes to us. Elul is the days that we go to him. We have to prepare for it. We have to prepare for those days. To the extent that preparation takes place in Elul, in those 30 days, to that extent, so there will be that reciprocation coming the 10 days off. Mishnah Berurah points out as well, if you look at the pasuk, Anila Dodi V'Dodili, the last letter of each of those words is a yud, and up in Gematria that's 40, that's a hint, allusion to the 40 days, going from Rosh Chodesh Elul to Yom Kippur. What's the problem with the drasha, with all the drashas, is that the name, as I mentioned, the name of the month, the names come much later. In the Torah, in the Chumash, the months don't have names. These are Babylonian names which came only during the second exile. So it's very nice after the fact to take the name of the month and to add on and to learn from the drashot. As I said, everybody learns the drashot, the Mishnah Berurah quotes it, etc. But is there an allusion to this idea of Elul being the preparation coming for the time of Rosh Hashanah? How does it come into the names of the month? So I saw in the name of the Avnei Nezer, he says the following. He says it's not just a made-up drasha that comes out afterwards, although the name Elul is a later name. But he says, look at what are the names of the month according to the Torah. The name of this month that we're in currently now is Chodesh HaShishi, and the name of the next month is Chodesh HaShvi'i. Right, the 6th month, the 7th month. That's what it is. He says there you have it. He says there's the allusion. He says the 6th month is preparation for the 7th month. By definition, the numbers, the names of the month themselves. 6 comes before 7 when you count it. Discussed it during Sfat HaOmer, has many applications. But the one number is a preparation for the next one. So you see, you don't have to go far. You don't have to go to these to the drashot later from Psukim. The name of the month itself, that's the Avnei Nezer. He says the 6th month is the preparation for the 7th. That is maybe the intrinsic significance of Elul in terms of that it's in order to prepare for the month that comes afterward, coming into Tishrei. So the last thing, just to mention, and go back, I mentioned a few times, think tomorrow night maybe we'll talk about it a little bit more. It's the idea of la'abev satan. It's confusing the Satan, whoever it is, and whatever it is. And every time, as I said, every time we mention it, I think we get more confused by this idea. So we find a number of different minhagim. We said the fact that we blow the shofar throughout the month of Elul is la'abev satan. The fact that we don't blow the shofar the day before Rosh Hashana is la'abev satan. The Levush writes as well. He says a number of other minhagim that we have on Rosh Hashanah come from the same reason, la'abev satan. I'll just mention tonight. Tomorrow we'll have to try and explain a bit further. But he says, for example, the fact that we don't have Shabbos Mevarchim. There's no Shabbos Mevarchim of Tishrei. It's not Kiddush, right? Shabbos Mevarchim of why not? He says, la'abev satan. He says the fact that we don't the Torah reading, we start going in, we start reading Chumash Bereshit, we start again on Simchat Torah. Make more sense. Start reading from the beginning of the year, Rosh Hashanah. He says the reason we don't, again, la'abev satan. Why don't we mention explicitly in our tefillot that it's Rosh Chodesh? All these things, says the Levush, is la'abev satan, in order that he won't know when Rosh Hashanah is. And again, when the Chazan gets up with a kittel, like, what does he think is going on? When people go home and eat simanim, look at the look. So it's very, very strange. It's very mysterious, this idea. But tomorrow night we'll crack open a little bit of the mystery and understand what's behind it. Hanania ben Akash אומר, שהקדוש ברוך הוא לזכות ישראל לפניך בעליהם תורה ומצוות, שני אמר אדוני חפץ למען צדקו, יגדיל תורה ויד.